This teaching of the Buddha will find you when you most need it. The more your attention goes leaking outside, the more stupid you become. The more you focus inside, the sharper you become, and the more you'll be able to disband your sufferings and defilements. The more you focus outside, the more you pick up the fungus that causes damp rot, and the more you become a garbage pit. When we see defilements showing themselves in other people, we can see how ugly they are by seeing how ugly those people act. But when they show up in ourselves, we see them as good and right. This is where we're inconsistent, seeing our own defilements as our close friends, in line with the old saying, seeing a bladed discus as a petaled lotus. Is that the way we are? This is something really worth looking into. If you know how to focus on the arising of defilement, whether it's greed or anger, even it arises only a little bit, you should focus on staring it down to the point where you can snuff it out. If you don't make use of this approach, you won't have the strength to fight it off. If you feed it fuel until it starts fabricating all out of bounds, it will flare up as a huge fire and you won't be able to put it out. If you want to put it out, you have to snuff it out in the very first stage where it appears as a slight sense of liking or disliking. You have to keep contemplating to see, when the mind is empty as it is right now, how these feelings arise. You have to contemplate to see how they disappear and how you can make sure that nothing else will arise to fabricate them any further. Your awareness of the stem point of fabrication is a means of snuffing out suffering right from the start, a means that's correct and uses the least strength. Snuffing out blatant greed and anger isn't easy, for their roots are still in place. They're still nourished by fertilizer. That's why they have to keep flowering and bearing fruit. So, if we really want to take the approach that's quickest and most correct, we have to focus down on destroying delusion, our lack of familiarity with the truth. Focus right on the issue of how defilements, when they arise, make the mind murky, bothered, and hot. Then contemplate how to disband them. When they disband, does the mind feel cool? Keep looking right there. The coolness here doesn't come from our making it cool. It's cool in and of itself, without our having to shower it with water. It's the feeling tone of the mind when it can let go of something. It's cool in and of itself. Contemplating yourself repeatedly gives you a sense of the mind's higher nature that can pull you up to release. It's a means of dispersing the side of the mind that used to fasten onto things so that it grows weaker and weaker with regard to everything of every sort. You do this through the power of mindfulness and discernment, not through the power of defilement, craving, or clinging. When the mind is struggling to get something, just watch it at first. Only when it stops struggling should you deal with the issue in line with what's appropriate. In this way, desire will grow weaker, and your actions will lie under the power of mindfulness and discernment. If we don't experiment with using the power of mindfulness and discernment to win out over defilement, we'll stay ignorant as always. We'll just keep on eating and living at our own convenience. But when anything strikes, we'll start spinning away, grasping after all kinds of things. This is because we haven't worked at developing endurance and tolerance. We haven't trained ourselves to endure looking at pain and suffering, to endure focusing on pain and suffering, to see how heavy they are, to see whose pains and suffering they are. Only if we endure looking at the pain and suffering, endure focusing on the pain and suffering until the pain and suffering dissipate. That's when we'll gain great benefits from our practice. We have to train ourselves a great deal in contemplating pain, focusing on pain, to the point where we can let go of pain and the mind doesn't fall in line with pain. The pain then doesn't go any further than the body. As for pleasure, you don't have to latch onto it. You don't have to be pleased by pleasure. You have to see pleasure and pain as equal. They're equally inconstant and stressful as they've been from the very beginning. No matter how pain arises while sitting in meditation, you have to endure looking at it until you can let it go. See it as the stress of physical and mental phenomena, or the stress of the aggregates. As for the mind, keep it in a state of normalcy without struggling. In this way, craving won't arise. If you let craving arise first, you'll have a hard time letting it go. It'll thrash all around. Simply be involved in watching the pain. When it arises, let it arise. If it's strong, simply know that it's strong. Don't let craving arise. Let there just be the feeling in and of itself. Notice how it takes shape, how it changes, and simply watch it that way. Keep any craving at bay. Or if you want, you can turn and look at the mind pure and simple. If it's in a turmoil, you can know that craving has already arisen. If it's at normalcy, watch over it carefully, for it can pick up moods very quickly. If your attention lapses, it'll go flowing along with a mood. When you go chasing after good and bad and latch onto your sense of self, you create a huge fuss. But when you really know clearly, you sort out these problems so that they fade away. When you really examine all the evidence, you'll see that there's no good or bad arising. It all disbands. But then new thought fabrications arise and pass away, arise and pass away. They keep on flowing, and they seem to involve many issues. But actually, there aren't many issues. There's only arising, remaining, and passing away. It's because we're not focused on knowing this that the issues come to seem many. But no matter how many there are, there's just this, arising, remaining, and passing away, one after another, like the rippling of a current of water, where the rippling isn't a thing at all. If you look into the pattern of the current of your thoughts, fabricating good and bad, you'll find that there's nothing you can latch onto as having any essence, for all these thoughts disband and disappear. If you learn how to look skillfully in this way, your mind will be empty more than embroiled, for you see the truth that these things all arise, remain, and pass away. The past has passed away. The future hasn't yet come. Look simply at the present arising and passing away right before your eyes, and don't latch on. When you see arising, remaining, and passing away, pure and simple, right in the present moment, and then can let go, right there is where you gain release. There's an old saying, a flagpole planted in a swift-flowing stream, right there's the Buddha whose Dhamma's supreme. In a swift-flowing stream refers to the present, where there's fabrication, change, arising and passing away. Right there's the Buddha whose Dhamma's supreme means that clear knowing is found right there. Letting go of attachment occurs right there. Examine your mind to see what kind of currents it's flowing after. Then stop to look at them. Stop to be aware of them. Ultimately, you'll see that there's actually nothing there, just arising and passing away in emptiness, like a projected image that flashes into being and disappears, empty of any essence. If your looking inward sees all the way through, you'll see that none of the things of the world have any value at all, for the highest value lies with the mind imbued with clear knowing, bright and clean. Even if this knowing is only momentary, it means that your practice isn't in vain. You can take it as your guide to continue following until you disband suffering and defilement without trace. The internal sense of the mind will show itself of its own accord, like a diamond embedded in rock. When the rock is cut away, the sparkle and shine of the diamond show themselves of their own accord. In the same way, when the mind is embedded in defilement, craving, and clinging, it's totally dark, totally in the dark. There's no light or brightness to it at all. But when our cutting tools, mindfulness and discernment, bring out its facets, the mind will be bright on its own. The Dhamma covers many topics, but they're all gathered at the mind. Defilements are a kind of Dhamma, as are discernment and the 5 aggregates. Everything's Dhamma. Now, what we want is the highest Dhamma, the Dhamma that's unfabricated. We want to know what it's like, so where does it lie? It lies right here in the mind. The mind that isn't fabricated, that's empty of itself. That's the genuine dharma. In contemplating the phenomena of the present, the way things arise, remain, and disband, you have to keep looking until you see through to that which doesn't arise or disband. When you fully comprehend arising, remaining, and disbanding, you'll come face to face with emptiness. Emptiness isn't empty in the way you'd sit and say to yourself, "There's nothing there at all." There are things there. The eye sees sights, the ear hears sounds, and so on. They're empty simply in that the mind doesn't enter in to label them, to concoct anything out of them, to cling to them, liking or disliking them, that's all. They're empty in that the mind is free from attachment. If you don't know how to extinguish things, how to let go, you'll get stuck on every level of the path. If you get stuck on the delicious flavor of emptiness or stillness, that's delusion's version of nibbana. The practice requires that you pass through a lot of things. If you gain new knowledge and latch onto it, that will create an obstacle along your way. It's like taking a journey. If you run across something strange and new, and you're not willing to continue along your way because you get contented with where you already are, you end up setting up house right there. Your ability to continue on the journey depends on an awareness that sees clearly all the way through. But here your awareness isn't clear all the way through, and yet you set up house right here, thinking that nibbana lies right here at the emptiness. That opinion is what blocks your way. If you take that sense of stillness and emptiness simply as a resting spot, it holds little danger, for you still have the opportunity to continue along your way. The path that snuffs out defilement has to focus on snuffing out the view that latches onto knowledge and views. You have to recognize the stages of the path that you need as resting spots, and to realize that you're holding on to them simply as temporary dwellings. If you grip them tightly, you'll get stuck there and will go no further. If your awareness focuses down like this again and again and again, the mind will ultimately have to surrender. Its old habit of wandering around to know this and that will gradually calm down and grow still without your having to force it, for it won't be able to withstand your constant gaze. Every time you look at it, you'll see its deceptiveness. You'll see that it's not worthy of credence, not worthy of attachment, and so that deceptiveness will have to shrink away. It's like a person who comes to flatter you. As soon as you focus your gaze on him and realize what he's up to, he has to shrink away in embarrassment. To focus on the point where your sense of self arises, your mindfulness and discernment have to develop many approaches from many angles, using tricks that you figure out on your own. The basic trick is a small thing. Look for the point where the sense of self disbands on its own. If your awareness doesn't penetrate clearly into the disbanding of the property of consciousness, there's no way you can know how mental states arise and pass away. There's no way you can know how they wander around to take on objects, how they fall into the swirling currents of good and bad thought fabrication, or how they get all wound up in a turmoil. So when you choose your focus, focus directly on the disbanding of mental states. When they take on an object, do they then disband? Keep looking until you can see how they disband on their own. If you can't manage this, focus first on the disbanding of physical and mental phenomena. When you clearly see the disbanding of physical and mental phenomena, you'll know for yourself how the consciousness which knows that disbanding also disbands on its own. Each and every moment it knows those things. Knowing the disbanding of consciousness is very useful. No matter how it arises, consciousness always disbands on its own. That way you won't latch onto the idea that it has a self of any kind. To know the disbanding of consciousness pure and simple is to know the disbanding of everything. It's like opening up the entire world or stripping off the entire world and throwing it away. When you can strip it away, throw it off and let it go, there's nothing but emptiness, an emptiness that's bright and clear, with no sense of the world at all. The words world and five aggregates are simply conventions to help us see how there's change. To become acquainted with the property of awareness pure and simple, you have to observe the mind's movements in response to contact. You have to know arising and passing away, and you have to observe the awareness that accompanies the mind, which lies deep within the mind or in the property of consciousness. If it's not fabricated or labeled, it will stay quiet. It will maintain its stance. If you want to see how long it can maintain its stance, you have to observe its movements in response to contact or in response to the internal sensation of labeling. When these things arise, can that awareness maintain its stance? If it can't, it will get fabricated into distraction. And by the time the matter calms down, you'll be worn out. If you can see into the condition of awareness pure and simple, you'll know your foundation, your inner foundation. In the beginning, you have to depend on mindfulness as your foundation for focusing on in. Then you focus on looking to know the condition of change, of arising and passing away. This is focused looking, not simple looking. Simple looking doesn't lead to any knowledge. It's delusion. Focused looking to the point of giving rise to clear knowing is, in and of itself, a means of destroying delusion. On whatever level you're free from fabrication, from mental labels, or free from attachment, it's a means of clear knowing within the mind or the property of consciousness. For your awareness to reach into the gathering point of the mind or of the property of consciousness pure and simple, you have to focus on the condition of change within the mind itself. You do this to destroy the deep seeds of the property of consciousness. These seeds, which lie continually in the property of consciousness, are very refined. These are the seeds of sensual craving, craving for becoming, and craving for non-becoming. Sensual craving is something fairly easy to observe. The way it moves in to create desire for sights, sounds, smells, tastes, tactile sensations is something fairly easy to see. As for the more latent seeds of craving for becoming, the craving to be or have a self or things belonging to a self, these lie deep, so we have to look deeply in if we want to destroy them. If you can see all the way through to these seeds and can destroy them, that will be your path to release from suffering. This gathering point of the property of consciousness pure and simple, or of the property of awareness pure and simple, is thus something really worth looking into. If you don't gather your awareness to look into this point, you'll find it hard to destroy the seeds. Whatever seeds you do destroy will be external seeds, such as those in sensory pleasures. But the seeds that are latent tendencies lying within the mind or the property of consciousness have no intentions of their own. That's why we rarely see all the way into them, why we rarely know them, rarely see them. This is because we play around with their children, their followers, sensory pleasures. We don't focus on in to look inside to get any perspective at all. The unintentional tendencies that lie deep your character, you can't intentionally get rid of them at the drop of a hat. The only way to get rid of them is to contemplate inwardly step by step so that you know them clearly. You have to reach the basic level of knowing that's unintentional if you want to get rid of the other unintentional things in the mind. The property of consciousness contains within it the sense of being or having a self. It contains the seeds that give rise to being and having in the same way that a seed contains bark, branches, and leaves. If you focus in to know the condition of the property of name and form pure and simple, that in and of itself will destroy the seeds for rebirth. We have to contemplate to see natural conditions of both sorts, starting with the changing condition of such things as the aggregates, penetrating through to the unchanging condition which is the total disbanding of suffering. The sort that changes keeps changing its disguises without respite, deceiving us into latching onto it as genuine and true. In particular, our fascination with pleasurable feelings. Even when we train the mind to be still, we're hoping for the delicious flavor of the pleasurable feeling. This is because we haven't contemplated the deceptiveness of feelings of every sort. Some arahants gain awakening through becoming acquainted with feeling and destroying the obsessions that lie latent in all three kinds of feeling. Obsession with irritation lies latent in painful feeling. As soon as pain arises, whether it's mental or physical pain, irritation arises in the mind. Obsession with passion lies latent in pleasant feeling. We like pleasure of every kind, wanting it to stay with us for a long time. When a feeling of equanimity, neither pleasure nor pain, arises, we get absorbed in the equanimity because we don't know that it's just a feeling that has to arise and pass away in line with its conditions. This is why obsession with ignorance lies latent in equanimous feeling. How do we let go of these obsessions? This is something to which we should give a lot of attention, because feeling has a lot of allure that can engender craving. For example, when the mind is still and empty and then changes so that it's no longer still and empty, we want it to be still and empty again. The more we want, the more it's not empty. If we can disband the desire for emptiness, that in and of itself will let the mind will grow empty again. Desire is what gets the mind embroiled in a turmoil, so desire is what we have to disband. We practice restraint of the senses so as to disband desire, because the mind is always desiring to see the sights, hear the sounds, smell the aromas, taste the flavors, and touch the tactile sensations surrounding it on all sides. It's because we don't know how desire is the cause of suffering that we struggle to satisfy our desires, and then all kinds of suffering follow. The word sankhata dhamma, fabricated phenomena, covers conditions of nature that are marked by the three characteristics. The things we have to study are summarized in two words, sankhata dhamma and asankhata dhamma. Both of these terms have a deep and wide range of meaning, especially sankhata dhammas, which are always inconstant, stressful, and not self. The conditions of sankhata dhamma follow their own swirling currents without end. As for asankhata dhamma, the phenomenon that doesn't change isn't stressful, but is still not self. That's something hard to know. But even this refined, subtle condition is something that we shouldn't latch on to. When the mind stops, grows still, and is aware of itself, let it focus even more deeply on itself, for its stopping state is the mental state that's concentrated or in equanimity. Still, neutral, neither pleased nor displeased. This is a type of fabrication called ananjabhisankara, imperturbable fabrication, or if you want, you can call it neutral fabrication. When you focus on it, see it simply as an aspect of nature. Don't get sucked into the stillness, the neutrality, or the equanimity. At the same time, though, you do have to depend on the equanimity to focus in on seeing things as aspects of nature, pure and simple. This is a way of disbanding any fabrication of liking or disliking, good or bad. For this reason, we don't stop just at the equanimity. We have to see all the way through it that it's an aspect of nature free of self. When the fabricated aspects of nature disband, the mind stays with its awareness of equanimity. Then you focus on the equanimity to be aware of it as an aspect of nature, without using any labels or words. Simply focus on in to watch it, to become acquainted with the aspect of nature that lies further in, without labeling anything at all. As you see into every level of nature pure and simple, things get deeper and more profound. You know and let go, know and let go, know and let go, empty. Whatever appears, you let go. The important principle in your gazing inward is simply to let go. You look, you see, and you let go. Incline the mind to letting go. Look in absolute stillness with no inner conversation. Know and let go. Mindfulness keeps knowing through letting go of everything. The breath doesn't disappear. No matter how still or empty the mind, you're aware with every breath. If you don't know in this way, you'll soon lose focus and get distracted, or a fabrication of some sort will interfere so that you lose your foundation. When the mind fabricates unskillful thoughts, thoughts of sensual passion, thoughts of ill will, thoughts of harmfulness, these are all called demeritorious fabrications, apunyabhisankara. When the mind gains a sense of the drawbacks of sensual passion and develops a sense of distrust, disgust, and distaste for sensual passion, that's how you cleanse the mind of sensual passion, so that it's not stuck on sensual passion, so that it's stuck instead on disenchantment. When the mind sees the drawbacks of ill will and thinks instead in terms of goodwill and forgiveness, that's how you destroy ill will. When you see the drawbacks of harmfulness, you then think or act in ways that aren't harmful. All of these things are called meritorious fabrications, punyabhisankara. When the mind fabricates these things, whether meritorious or demeritorious, it puts itself into a turmoil. Skillful thoughts have to keep thinking so as to do away with unskillful thoughts. If you think too much, it can make you tired, both in body and mind. When this happens, you have to focus on a single preoccupation to bring the mind to concentration. When you focus in concentration, throwing away both meritorious and demeritorious fabrications, and instead stay continuously stopped in a single preoccupation, this falls into the characteristics of imperturbable fabrication, ananjabhisankara. The sense of being snugly still or equanimous for long periods of time may not fit into the definition of imperturbable fabrications as jhana or the higher absorptions. It's simply a type of immovability endowed with mindfulness and discernment. The mind is aware of itself, focuses its gaze right on itself, and knows itself continuously without fabricating thoughts of good or evil. But this too can be included under imperturbable fabrication. For that reason, we have to find the aspect of the mind that can maintain its stance so as to see further in, so that it's not stuck on imperturbable fabrication. We have to penetrate to the point where we can see clearly in terms of the arising, remaining, and passing away, the inconstancy, stress, and not-selfness that are gathered in here as well. You have to sharpen this basic principle of knowing so that it's razor sharp, so that you can see the truth that nothing has any true essence, that it's all illusory. Knowing and not knowing trade places so that they seem to be different, but if you get stuck on this duality, you're stuck on yourself. If you're really going to know, you have to know both sides, the side that knows and the side that doesn't know, to see that they're both inconstant in the same way, both deceitful in the same way. Your sense of physical and mental phenomena is all fabrication. Mindfulness is a fabrication. Discernment is a fabrication. Even the still mind is a fabrication. When it's not still, it's a fabrication. So look at fabrication deeply, precisely, from all angles, inside and out. Knowledge, even the observer, the knower, is also fabrication. They're all fabrication, whether they're right or wrong, good or bad. So you have to acquaint yourself thoroughly with fabrication. When you know fabrication thoroughly in a way that penetrates inwardly, it gives rise to a sense of disenchantment. If you don't do this, you'll take your pick of the good fabrications to hold on to and push the bad fabrications away. We can recognize fabrications in that they change and can disband, and then we realize that we've been playing around with these fake imitation things all along. Even clear knowing is a fabrication. It changes in line with physical and mental conditions. Mindfulness, discernment, and intuitive knowing and seeing are all fabrications, just that they're good fabrications that we have to depend on for the time being. We have to understand fabrications, understand how to use fabrications in a correct way, and then simply let them go. We don't have to keep holding on to them. Knowing is a fabrication. Not knowing is a fabrication. When we examine them internally, we see that they both arise and pass away. Even the truths that we know in this way don't stay long. They have to turn into not knowing. From this, we can see that fabrications play all sorts of tricks on many, many levels, and we get deluded into playing along with them. When we can get to know the tricks of fabrication of every sort on every level, that will be really beneficial. We'll really know in line with what the Buddha said, Sabbe Sankhara Anicca, all fabrications are inconstant. This is an important principle that will enable us to see through to the stressfulness in every sort of fabrication. Even good fabrications like mindfulness and discernment are stressful in and of themselves because that have to keep changing. They're like tools we use for the time being, but we shouldn't stay fastened onto them. Even though we have to look after the foundation of our knowing, using mindfulness and discernment to supervise the mind, we should understand that the mind is a form of fabrication. Mindfulness and discernment are fabrications. If we know only on a superficial level and go around talking about what we've been able to let go on our level of practice, we haven't seen deeply into fabrication. When this is the case, we still lie in the swirling currents of fabrication. Correct knowledge, which is fabrication of a good sort, has to be trained to read and decipher things within and without, including itself, on many convoluted levels. Once you've seen inconstancy and stress, you have to see through to the lack of self in fabrications of every sort. You have to know that fabrication is inconstant, stressful, and has no self to itself. Keep looking at this point over and over again until it becomes clear to the heart. Only then will you develop a sense of disenchantment and dispassion. You won't fasten onto good fabrications or push bad ones away, for you've seen that they have the same price, they're both equally changeable. Even though we maintain the stance of our knowing and looking over the mind to make sure that it isn't fabricated even more from outside conditions, still we don't stay fastened onto the knowing, for it too has to change. There come times when we think we know the truth in this matter, but then at later times or later moments even clearer, knowing arises. That enables us to know that what we thought was true, knowing actually wasn't. This knowing can change. No matter how much higher it goes as it changes, you have to remember that it's still fabrication. It can still change no matter what level it is. Whether it's crude or refined, you have to know it thoroughly. Otherwise, you'll stay fastened to it. If you can look in a way that sees all fabrications thoroughly, good, bad, right, wrong, the knower, the not knower, simply as the same sort of thing, your knowledge will gradually rise above these things. But even though it's above, it's still fabrication. It hasn't yet gained release from fabrication. Even the path is a form of fabrication. So when we develop the path, when we develop the factor of right view, we have to see rightly into this matter, seeing clearly into fabrication of every sort, no matter what the characteristics of our knowing. Whether we look at physical phenomena or mental phenomena arising and passing away, they're all fabrications. Even the mind firmly established in concentration is a form of fabrication, as are the stages of jhana. If we don't look inward, we make the mind dark and murky. Then when sensory contact comes, the mind can easily get all stirred up. So I ask that you make an effort to peer carefully inward to see what's there in the mind, to see how things arise, to see how mental labels and fabrications arise. That way you'll be able to disband them, destroy them, leaving just the mind pure and simple, with no labels or attachments at all. It will then be empty of defilement. You might call it your inner beauty, Miss Emptiness, who doesn't have to age, doesn't have to grow ill, doesn't have to die, a primal nature that doesn't change. This is something you have to touch right at the mind. It's not the mind itself, but the mind itself is what makes contact with it. When we practice, we're like diamond cutters. Our diamond, the mind, is embedded in dense, dark defilements. We have to use mindfulness and discernment, or virtue, concentration, and discernment as our cutting tools to make the mind pure in all its thoughts, words, and deeds. Then we train the mind to grow still and to contemplate so as to give rise to clear knowledge all the way to the point where you meet with what's totally pure and free from defilements and mental fermentations. Our Miss Emptiness, who is so extremely beautiful, free from change, whom the King of Death can't see. And as to whether this is something worth aspiring to, I leave it up to you to decide.